The story begins in silence, not the peaceful silence of dawn, but the uneasy quiet that comes before the storm. Somewhere between the fall of one empire and the rise of another, a war erupted that would change everything, yet history has forgotten it. No textbooks mention its name, no monuments mark its graves. To the world, it never happened, but evidence whispers otherwise. A torn page in a monastery archive, a burned letter sealed with wax from a kingdom that officially never existed, a rusted sword buried under centuries of dust, engraved with a crest no historian can trace. Every fragment points to the same conclusion. Someone wanted this war erased. In the late 18th century, as Europe fought for power and the world began to shrink through conquest and trade, a shadow conflict burned beneath the surface. Two great powers, one ancient and fading, the other young and ruthless, clashed not for land, but for control of the future. The war began in the borderlands, in places maps no longer name. It started with a treaty, broken before the ink had dried. Merchants were seized, envoys disappeared, ships vanished into fog. Then came the armies. Thousands marched under banners that today exist only in fragments of tapestry. The first battles were fought in silence, no official records, no declarations, just smoke rising over villages that would soon be forgotten. For the Empire, it was a war of survival. For the rebels, it was a war of identity. Each side believed they were saving civilization. Both were destroying it. The old empire had ruled for centuries, its wealth built on trade routes and colonies, its influence woven into every corner of diplomacy. But power breeds complacency. Behind the marble halls and glittering courts, rot had begun to spread. Corruption ate through the heart of the government. Soldiers went unpaid. Provinces starved, while nobles feasted. In the shadows, revolution brewed. Scholars whispered about liberty, soldiers questioned their orders, and distant governors saw an opportunity. And when the first gun fired in a port city long erased from maps, it lit a chain reaction that no one could stop. The young rival nation saw its chance. They sent weapons, spies, and promises of independence to the rebels. They were saviors. To the empire, traitors. To history, they became ghosts. The first major battle lasted 3 days. Eyewitness accounts, what little survive, describe chaos, fire consuming entire streets, rivers running red, bells ringing endlessly as civilians fled. By the time the smoke cleared, nothing remained but ruins. Tens of thousands died. And then, the record ends. No official report, no casualty list, no victory proclaimed. It's as if the entire city was wiped from existence. Later historians called it the blank chapter. Locals tell legends of a night when the sky turned crimson and voices cried from beneath the earth. Some say the victors destroyed everything, not out of rage, but out of fear of what the truth would reveal. For the next decade, the war dragged on in secret. Battles were fought under false flags, letters written in invisible ink. Prisoners vanished in the night. Generals who once commanded glory were executed quietly or erased from portraits. Even their families were forbidden to speak their names. But silence breeds resistance. Hidden networks of monks, scholars, and soldiers began preserving what they could, copying documents by candlelight, smuggling relics through mountain passes, carving messages into stone walls that still bear faint marks today. One journal, found centuries later in the ruins of a monastery, speaks of a council of shadows where surviving officers swore an oath. If the empire falls, let memory not fall with it. It didn't save them. The empire fell anyway, but their oath survived. Whispered from generation to generation, a secret history waiting to be told. Meanwhile, the victors rewrote everything. They published new maps, redrew borders, renamed cities. Children were taught a simpler story. A small rebellion, quickly crushed, unworthy of remembrance. No mention of the millions displaced, the economies destroyed, the cultures erased. And in that erasure lay power, because when you control history, you control identity. The victors understood this better than anyone. They didn't need to win every battle. They just needed to write the last word. Yet traces of the truth refused to die. In remote villages, old songs still spoke of heroes who never existed in official history. Folktales described a war of fire and betrayal, of an empire that vanished overnight. Archaeologists unearthed weapons centuries out of place. Sailors told stories of ships with no flag, drifting ghost-like, crewed by men who claimed to fight for a kingdom the world no longer knew. Every discovery added a new piece to the puzzle, until one historian realized the pattern. The missing pieces weren't random. They formed a deliberate gap, a hole cut out of history itself. So, why erase a war? Perhaps the victors feared that the truth would expose their crimes, the massacres, the betrayals, the treaties signed in blood. Or maybe the war revealed something deeper, an idea too dangerous to survive. Some believe the conflict began over trade. Others say it was about independence. But a growing theory suggests it was something far more radical, a war for knowledge. Before it vanished, the old empire was on the verge of discovery. Engineers, philosophers, and mathematicians working in secret had begun developing technologies that could change everything. Communication across oceans, energy harnessed from motion itself. To the rival power, this was unacceptable. Dominion over knowledge meant dominion over the future. So they didn't just destroy the empire. They buried its science, its language, and its memory, ensuring that even its discoveries would be credited to others centuries later. Time passed. The world rebuilt itself atop the ruins. New nations rose, new wars began. But every empire carries ghosts, and this one was no different. In the archives of a coastal fortress, a sealed chest was discovered in 1912. Inside, a single letter. The handwriting matched no known script. The language, partly coded, partly lost. But 3 words stood out: recognizable, defiant, and chilling. They will forget. The letter's origin was traced to the vanished war. Its author remains unknown, but historians now agree whoever wrote it understood exactly what was happening. A deliberate cleansing of memory. Today, scholars, explorers, and digital historians continue to search for evidence. Every discovery deepens the mystery. Bones showing wounds from weapons centuries to advanced coins minted by nations that never existed. Maps whose coastlines don't match any era. Each artifact whispers the same thing. Something immense happened here, and someone didn't want you to know. Perhaps that's why even now, attempts to publicize the truth face resistance. Archives sealed. Funding withdrawn. Researchers discredited. It seems the war's silence still has protectors. And so, the story of the war they tried to erase from history begins not with armies or kings, but with a question. What does it mean to erase the past? Can memory truly die? Or does truth always find a way back? HistoryThe, remember, every empire claims to be eternal. Every ruler believes their legacy will last forever. But time has only one true power: to bury what it chooses. And somewhere, beneath centuries of dust, lies the first spark of this forbidden war, waiting to be uncovered. Because history isn't lost by accident. It's erased by design. The silence had ended. What began as whispers in border towns had become a storm of blood and fire. But this was no ordinary war. It was fought in the dark, beneath the eyes of history itself. Officially, nothing was happening. No records, no declarations, no newspapers. And yet, entire regions burned. Armies marched under false banners, pretending to be allies of the very nations they destroyed. Letters written in secret codes crossed mountains by night. Spies traded kingdoms for coins. Priests smuggled messages inside holy texts, and merchants became generals. The world was at war, but only a few knew it. In the shattered provinces of the fallen empire, resistance spread like a fever. Farmers became soldiers, poets became messengers, and old scholars, men once devoted to peace, began designing weapons. They fought not for victory, but for remembrance. They feared that if they lost, their people's story would vanish forever. The enemy knew this. They understood that to destroy a nation, you don't need to kill its armies, you need to erase its memory. So they targeted libraries, temples, schools. Every archive was burned. Every monument, ancient records that had survived centuries of time were lost in a single night of smoke. Somewhere, deep in a mountain stronghold, Scribes risked their lives to save even a few scrolls. They copied words by candlelight as enemy troops closed in. When they were found, their writings were burned with them. Still, a few fragments survived. Lines of poetry etched onto metal plates, songs passed down through generations, carrying hints of what was lost. Meanwhile, in the capitals of the new empire, victory was celebrated in silence. The rulers never admitted there had been a war. To them, this was a correction of history. They built monuments not for the fallen, but for themselves. Triumphs carved in stone, while the conquered were erased from the very maps that once bore their names. Yet, whispers persisted. Travelers spoke of ghost towns in the east, where wind blew through streets lined with burned statues. Old soldiers told tales of battles no one believed. One man claimed to have seen an entire army vanish in a single night, not defeated, but swallowed by the earth itself. Was it a legend? Or Kavura? By the third year of the conflict, the war had turned inward. Espionage became the new battlefield. Agents infiltrated courts and councils, sowing mistrust and betrayal. Old allies turned against one another, unsure who was truly loyal. Letters intercepted, oaths broken. The war no longer needed armies. It lived in the minds of men. One of the last surviving generals of the old empire wrote in his final journal, "The war no longer belongs to soldiers. It belongs to shadows. We fight not for victory, but for truth, and truth itself is dying." Days later, he disappeared. No body was ever found. Empire's remnants scattered. Many fled across the seas, carrying secrets that could expose the truth. They formed brotherhoods, secret circles sworn to keep the memory alive. Some became merchants in foreign ports, others scholars in hidden monasteries. They waited, believing one day the truth would surface. But time was not their ally. Their children forgot the language of their fathers. The documents faded, the codes were lost, and with every passing generation, memories slipped further into myth. Still, traces remained, symbols carved beneath bridges, crests hidden in paintings, invisible ink messages buried beneath layers of varnish. When the victors discovered them, they called it superstition, nothing more than legends. But legends have power. They survive where truth is forbidden. There were stories, hushed, dangerous stories, of secret massacres. Entire villages wiped from existence because someone there dared to preserve a page, a letter, a song. Soldiers were ordered not to kill swiftly. They were ordered to erase. Records rewritten, tombstones smashed, names changed. It was history's first memory war. To destroy a people is one thing. To destroy the idea of them, that is the real conquest. And yet, in the darkest corners, resistance still burned. A group of survivors known only as the Keepers gathered in the ruins of an old citadel. There, surrounded by smoke and silence, they swore a final oath. If we cannot win the war, we will win the memory. Let no one forget, even if our names are lost. They sealed their writings in iron boxers, buried them under the ruins of burned cities, and vanished. Some were caught and executed. Others simply disappeared into the forests, into the deserts, into the sea. No one ever found their graves. But centuries later, archaeologists unearthed boxers of strange metal filled with documents no one could read, their language unknown. Termisage erased by time, yet one line was still clear. Truth sleeps, but it does not die. The victors claimed peace had returned, trade routes reopened, cities rebuilt, and the new order began writing its version of history, glorious, simple, clean. Children grew up never knowing there had been a war at all. They believed the empire had fallen quietly, naturally, that the world they lived in had always been this way. But truth cannot be buried forever. It waits beneath layers of lies until someone dares to dig. And every empire, no matter how powerful, leaves cracks in its story. Centuries later, explorers began to notice the inconsistencies. Two maps from the same era, showing the same region, but one with cities that the other omitted entirely. A royal chronicle referencing the burning of the eastern frontier, yet no such event in official history. Ship logs describing fleets that never returned, dismissed as storms. Those survivors spoke of enemy fire, Piece by piece, the silence began to break. But the truth was still too dangerous. Even in modern times, some governments refused to release old archives. Some documents were found, only to be sealed again. Why? What secret could still be worth hiding hundreds of years later? Perhaps the war revealed something that threatened more than power, something that questioned the very foundation of civilization itself. So the shadows remain. We know there was a war. We know it changed everything. And we know someone tried to erase it. But the details, the who, the why, the how remain buried under centuries of silence. The few who still search call it the vanished conflict. Others call it the silent war. But the truth has only one name: the war they tried to erase from history. And though its soldiers are long dead, its echoes still shape our world and the borders we draw, the names we use, the lies we believe. Because history is not just written by the victors, it's protected by them. Imagine a conflict that reshaped borders, toppled dynasties, and cost countless lives. Yet today, it's little more than a historical footnote. If that, this isn't ancient history we're talking about. It's a war that occurred in a time of photographs and telegraphs, yet it vanished from our collective memory. How does something so significant just disappear? The reasons are complex. Shifting political alliances, deliberate suppression of records, and the simple, tragic fact that subsequent, larger wars overshadowed it. The generation that fought it passed away, their stories untold, their experiences lost. The world simply moved on. For decades, this war remained a ghost, until one historian, let's call her Dr. Eris Thorne, stumbled upon a single cryptic entry in a ship's log mentioning a naval blockade that didn't fit any known timeline. It was a thread, a tiny, almost insignificant thread, but Thorne was intrigued. She pulled on it. This single thread led her to a dusty box in a national archive, mislabeled and forgotten. They crowdsourced translations of diaries, used genealogical websites to trace family trees, and even used satellite imagery to locate the faint outlines of forgotten trenches that Dr. Thorne had read about in the letters. It was a grassroots movement to reclaim history. The sheer volume of evidence became impossible to ignore. Family stories corroborated the letters, which in turn corroborated the single entry in that ship's log. The turning point came when a descendant discovered a hidden trunk in their great-grandfather's attic. It contained not just his uniform, but his official military service record, clearly stating the name of the forgotten war and the campaigns he fought in. It was the smoking gun. Faced with irrefutable proof, the academic and political walls began to crumble. Official archives were re-examined, and sure enough, entire sections of records were found to have been deliberately misfiled or classified under misleading titles. The cover-up was real. Today, the forgotten war is slowly re-entering our history books. Memorials are being planned, and the names of its soldiers are finally being honored. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just a static story of kings and dates. It's a living, breathing thing, made up of individual human experiences. It shows that even when the truth is deliberately buried, it has a way of fighting its way back to the surface, often thanks to the tireless efforts of a few dedicated people and the enduring power of family memory. This story isn't just about a forgotten war. It's about our right to remember. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey into the past. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. And let me know in the comments, what piece of forgotten history do you think deserves to be brought into the light? See you next time.